right, it is a Tuesday morning, and Election Day is just 2 weeks away from today. And today, Vice President Kamala Harris is taking a day off the campaign trail in Washington, while former President Donald Trump courts Latino voters in South Florida.
So brand new poll numbers show Trump making major gains with Latino and black voters.
Aisha Hasni is live in Doral, Florida, where Trump will participate in a Latino voter roundtable and then go back to North Carolina. Hey, Aisha.
Hey, good morning to you guys. You know, I've been saying this for a while now. The former president has a really great opportunity this year, specifically because of the immigration crisis and the economy, to really reach out to minority voters, voters that would have normally gone to the Democratic Party. We saw that last week with Arab and Muslim Americans. We're seeing that with Hispanic Americans and Black Americans. Take a look at this brand new Suffolk poll out this week. It shows that Trump right now is leading Harris amongst Latino voters in a head-to-head. That's a big deal. He's trailing a little far behind, pretty far behind Harris among black voters. But put it in perspective here, guys. He got 8% to President Biden's 91% amongst black voters in 2020. So doing a lot better this time around. That's according to our voter analysis. So doing a lot better. Then, of course, that viral visit to a Pennsylvania McDonald's where he really was trying to reach out to the everyday man. He went there over the weekend. He was frying up French fries, working the drive-thru, really connected with a lot of people across the country. Now, Trump is coming off a big campaign blitz in North Carolina. That's where he saw the devastation of Hurricane Helene near Asheville firsthand. And despite the storm, guys, 1 million people so far have voted early in that state. And I asked him if there's any concern at all for him that some of his supporters in that area won't be able to get out to the ballot box. Are you worried that some people here won't be able to vote?
Look, voting is the least of it right now. They got to vote. They want to vote because it's very important, but they have to survive.
So he holds this Latino roundtable later today. It was actually supposed to happen back when Hurricane Helene hit. And then he will go back to North Carolina, once again showing just how critical that state is for his path to victory. Back to you.
Hey, Aisha, I got a quick question for you. It's 2 weeks before the election. Kamala Harris, is essentially taking the day off from the campaign trail. She's not going to be in a battleground state. She's going to be in Washington. Explain the philosophy behind that, because you would think she should be out shaking hands, kissing babies, stuff like that.
Well, I wish I was covering her campaign a little bit, because I would try to find out I wonder if they're recalibrating a little bit right now, because we're in this final sprint and she hasn't been able to break away in these polls at all. And that should be a concern. As far as the former president, who I am covering every single day, am exhausted covering him because he does not slow down. Yesterday was a whirlwind. I mean, it was 3 different stops in one day. And here we are in Miami, and he's back to work again this morning. So he's not slowing down, at least when it comes to the former president.
Yeah. All right, so last question. I was trying to find out where this statement came from. Kamala Harris said that Donald Trump is too exhausted to finish interviews. Is it from the Dan Bongino interview when he had to leave to go to the next interview? Where was that from? Like, why did she say that? Do you know?
Well, you know, I don't know what interview it was specifically. If it was the Dan Bongino one, I do know that Dan actually called the Harris campaign out on that, because he said that the former president actually sat with him even longer past the allotted time, sat with him and took more questions. And then eventually Dan was like, I think you probably have to go, which he tends to do, right? When he gets comfortable in interviews. I've interviewed him before, and we went over our allotted time because he wanted to keep answering my questions. And eventually I had to say, Mr. President, I got to get on TV. I got to get out of here. So I don't know where that's coming from. Okay. I've seen him do a ton of interviews. He took a bunch of questions yesterday in Asheville as well.
All right. Thanks so much, Aisha.
It's dishonest.
But there's so many critiques you could have of each other. I just was wondering where that came from. He doesn't want to debate, and he's too exhausted to do interviews. I don't know. How do you explain that?
I just think the tactic is to bait the former president into doing another debate. They see they're down in the poll. That she feels like she did great in the debate. She wants him more to do liberal interviews with liberal reporters. And so this is just a baiting thing. I don't think they really believe this.
They're saying he's going to bring in the military, national
it's just
abortion
nonsense.
ban. They're saying Project 2025. All of that is not true, and we'll talk about that throughout the show this morning. But as far as voting, early voting's concerned, many of us have looked up where we can early vote. What day? Here in New York, it's not until I think it's this coming Saturday. So the numbers aren't even in for many of these states. But so far, 15 million voters have already cast their ballot. And the shift really happened in 2020. It was after the pandemic or during the pandemic. People were scared to go out and vote. So they were voting mail-in ballots. And now we've realized it's pretty easy to do it. You can vote early. You don't have to wait in line. And we're seeing that record numbers even after the hurricane, Helene, in North Carolina. 353,000 ballots were cast on Thursday. That's a record. In Louisiana on Friday when it opened, 177,000 ballots cast. That's a record. And we're seeing in Georgia, we've been talking about that every single day almost since last Tuesday. They've almost seen records.
Right. And this flies in the face of the way historically the two parties have operated. The Republicans generally show up on Election Day, and the Democrats have had a better get out the vote early kind of campaign. But Ainsley, you're absolutely right. I think people realize that something could come up on Election Day and they might not be able to vote. And that's why the numbers are so high. What's interesting is, and particularly in North Carolina, where the Republicans are, the Democrats are still a little ahead. Although the Democrats historically have not won that state since 2008 with Barack Obama. But what the Republicans are doing is by getting more people out early, then on Election Day, what they can do is they can encourage infrequent voters. And those are the people who, when they ask the voters, the pollsters, are you a likely voter? Are you a registered voter? Well, I don't really know if I'm going to show up. I don't really vote that often. Those are the ones that Trump thinks he can pick up. And those, given the fact that it is going to be a photo finish, those are the people who could actually put him back in the White House.
So the candidates are making their final stops, and one of the center pieces of that is the barbershop. We learned yesterday that Kamala Harris's campaign went to Philadelphia to have a conversation. The only thing is Kamala Harris didn't show up to the barbershop, just the campaign did. Donald Trump did, and we have a little bit more of that interview.
You got a real estate guy. He's in the profession as you.
A competitor.
What's your question for the president?
You're a competitor of mine. That's
yes.
good. Go ahead.
My question is, what policy would you implement to, first off, lower these home prices, increase new construction homes, and lower interest rates for first-time home buyers and investors as well?
Well, we're going to get the interest rates down. Yeah, it's great. We're going to get, a big part of a home cost today is zoning and all the regulations and all the stuff you have to go through. It's like 30% the cost, and it's like paperwork. We're going to get rid of a lot of that.
When it comes to early voting, too. So you have in the battleground states, 5.3 million voting. Last time, the breakdown was early votes, 52-27. It was in favor of the Democrats because Republicans were reluctant to do it. Now the breakdown is much more encouraging for the right. It's 47% of the early votes have been for the Democrats, 33% have been for Republicans. So people are listening to the president's new message this time around. Vote early, vote when you can. Just make sure you vote.
Yeah, and Brian, to the point about early voting and everything else, we have seen, as we've put up the polls, we've seen that Kamala Harris has an advantage with women. Donald Trump has a big advantage with men. Here's the question. Who is voting early right now? So far in Georgia, 55% of the ballots returned have been by women. In North Carolina, 52%, and in Michigan, 56%. And when you look at the number of eligible women who voted in 2020, it was 68%, 65% men. So once again, whether it is the infrequent voter or the gender question, the people who can get out the vote are going to be the ones who win.
Know what you're voting for. Know your propositions, too. Later in the show, we're going to be talking about Prop 1 here in New York. It's an equal rights. And so you see that prop and you normally were going to vote, yes, you want equal rights for everyone. But in there, and we'll get into the details later, it's saying, yes, I allow my child to have gender transition surgery without me being notified if the school is pushing.
You got to read the fine
You have
print.
to read the fine
And it's
print.
become a major issue. Also, to your point, Ainsley, as you broke down some of the numbers, I hope people don't get comfortable. Just because you see that the Republicans are having a lead right now, things could change in
Yes,
an election.
every
And
vote
as
matters.
people see the Republicans have the lead, you can bet yourself that the Democrats' ground operation are going to double their efforts. So don't get comfortable.
Right.
Still go out and show up to vote.
All right, so let's talk about some of the narratives that are out there. Who are you going to vote for? The 59-year-old turned 60-year-old vice president who wants to be the agent of change even though she's in power? Or the president that wants to make history, first time since Grover Cleveland, to lose and then come back and win? I think it's also important to at least know what they stand for. And there's three narratives out there that stand out that just don't seem to be true when it comes to Project 2025, the president turning the military on his political enemies, and there's some others, especially abortion ban. The abortion ban's another.
National abortion ban, yeah.
Yeah. So here's a little of the attacks going on the former president.
It's also disrespectful to our military to ask our military to react or to do something in such a political such a political way.
He considers any American who doesn't support him or bend to his will to be an enemy to our country.
He is out for unchecked power. That's what he's looking for. He wants to send the military after American citizens.
They got to stop doing this. And you would think they would lower the rhetoric after the two assassinations. This is why you have so many threats going on against the former president. It was because they keep saying he's a threat, that people are going to get killed. And they criticize his rhetoric all day, but they don't realize how inflammatory this is in a country that's on edge right now.
Well, Lawrence, keep in mind, we've been talking about it since over a year, since March of last year, when the campaign explained how they were going to go after Donald Trump. And they said they were going to say he was a threat to democracy. And that's why, even though there have been those two assassination attempts, and one of them almost worked, they just continue to do that because that's their game plan. And you've got that Frankenstein machine, essentially, on the Democratic side, because you've got the White House team, you've got the Joe Biden Wilmington team, then you've got the Kamala Harris team, and you've got the Obama team, and they're all trying to work together, and they're going back to the original playbook.
It is just they're just lies. Project 2025, Heritage Foundation, that was not Donald Trump. He never even read it, he said. Not involved in that at all. The national abortion ban, if you watch all these ads that Kamala Harris is putting out, it says, Trump, national abortion ban. Not true. He's sending the abortion issue back to each state. If you live in New York, you probably always get an abortion. If you live in Alabama, maybe not. I don't know. But it's whatever you decide as the voter of the state. That has nothing to do with
He's actually getting pushback from the pro-life community because he's against
and then
it.
he explained what he actually means when they're using the military thing. He's going to use the military to go against his enemies. It's not true, and he explained what he means by it.
So this is a Wall Street Journal quote we just pulled. It says, I never said I would use the military. Biden said that he expects there to be a lot of trouble if I win the election. That's where this came from. If you're talking about you're going to have riots in the streets, you would certainly bring the National Guard. So I'm not talking about in cases like where you need help. You can't say I'll never bring in everything as the entire country is disappearing in bedlam. But certainly not against my opponents. It's against civil unrest. One thing he did say in watching the myriad of interviews and watching The Daily Show last night, so what he says is, yeah, I get the job as president, and then they unleash the dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton. She got fined thousands of dollars for doing it. Then you have the whole Comey together with the others with the secret plan for 2.5 years.
Strzok and Page.
Read the Durham report to see what Adam Schiff and others did behind the scenes to make sure he wasn't successful. See how former Secretary of State Kerry was talking to Iranian associates. Don't worry, he's going to be impeached and going to go back into this nuclear deal. He says these are enemies of the state when he says within because they work here. But I never looked at it in these quotes and the interviews and think, well, he's going to use the army to go get Adam Schiff.
Well, did you see Kamala Harris when she was there with Liz Cheney? Someone yelled, "Lock him up." And she said, she says back to the person, courts will take care of that. Courts will take care of that.
Yeah.
In November.
Do you notice they don't jump on the whole felon thing anymore?
No, because they've gotten a lot of pushback.
Because the court case is a joke. Even former Governor Cuomo says nobody else would.
But it also goes against, Brian, part of their base. It used to be the Democratic position to let felons vote, to let them get jobs. Right. They're demonizing their own supporters.
Which is over 30 million people are felons and now out after serving their time.
Yep.
So after over a year of talking about, actually going back to, even further, to January 6th, where they have labeled Donald Trump a threat to democracy, what's really interesting now is the answer to this question. Who would do a better job handling threats to democracy? This was a Washington Post school poll. Donald Trump actually is ahead of Kamala Harris by 3 points, which is beyond the margin of error, which is 1.7, which is extraordinary given the fact that we have heard it nonstop for 3 or 4 years, and now he actually is on top.
And for the record, Joe Biden backed out of that attack plan when he was going against Trump because it was not resonating. And number two is, it was in 2020. There were plans, if Trump had won, to have riots in almost every one of these major cities. That was the attack plan they didn't have to use because Joe Biden got more of the votes.
Meanwhile, we've been talking about the gender gap. We've been talking about infrequent voters. One woman who extraordinarily, and I didn't realize this until she popped up on Jesse Waters' primetime last night, one woman who has never voted in a presidential election is right there, Danica Patrick. She had a rule, essentially, when she was racing, she wasn't going to be public about any of that and didn't even bother to vote. But this time is really important. And this time she's voting for Trump.
It's been so confusing to me how when you say MAGA, it's meant to be an insult. I am passionate because it feels like voting for Donald Trump is like the vote of reason. It's like the rational, reasonable choice. I feel like most of all, though, what this country could be if he gets into office with all of the amazing, brilliant people that are supporting him, I feel like it could not only make America great again, but make America greater than it's ever been.
You're a woman who broke into a man's sport and now men's and women's sports. It's all very confusing. Is that something that you see this election really causing a lot of problems with?
It's and women are voting. And, I think maybe one of the reasons why women are having a harder time with the vote is just his personality. I mean, that's the most common answer you hear from people is I just can't vote for him. And I don't think that's a good enough reason. You don't have to go to dinner with him. You just have to like the country that you live in.
So she's in the Trump column.
Yeah. Wow. She's a trailblazer. Remember when he found out she was going to be a NASCAR driver? And that had never happened, I don't think. I don't think a woman had ever participated. But yeah, that's cool that this is the first time she's voting, and she's voting for Trump. Was talking about it on Jesse, not afraid to tell everybody.
She went to a Charlie Kirk rally, started getting politically aware, started doing some studying, said, I'm all in. A couple of things just to bring up before we toss over to, we have more. Forgot about that. I had something to say, but I'm
go for it. Go for it.
Right?
Good transition.
Right.
You said you had more.
I'm definitely not going to put this on my resume.
One of the issues that she brought up is men competing in women's sports. Yeah. And it's an issue that has become potent for men that are voting for Donald Trump. He's taken it away from Democrats because of this issue. We brought it up in the barbershop the other day. Here's a little bit of that.
Some of the fellas are concerned about what's happening in the schools. Yeah. And they want a parent. Yeah. They don't want all this nonsense being taught to their children.
You're not into transgender, right?
And
you don't want your boy going to school.
So what are you going to do about that?
We're going to end it. It ends immediately. And you're not going to have men playing in women's sports if you have a daughter. I mean, it's so crazy.
Well, my daughter's a state. She's a state and national wrestler, champion.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to wrestle a man, right?
Well, in New York, they have yet to segregate. In the high schools, they have yet to segregate male and female in wrestling. So
she's
she was wrestling against
good?
boys.
She's very good?
She was good.
So let me ask you, how would you have done against an average man?
Who? Her?
Your daughter, yeah.
She would have done pretty good. I've seen her pin young men in high school. So, and once again,
you don't want to break up with her, enough course.
Good line.
So that just says a huge problem. It's like boys are told, you treat girls with respect, and all of a sudden you're in a singlet and you're wrestling them at the 136 pounds. So they broke it up, and now there's women's wrestling. They should absolutely separate 100%. On boxing. Yeah, I mean, we saw that with the Olympics.
You're going to get someone with a concussion.
There you go. Now, safety concern.
So that's the soundbite we just set up. Brian, you started to say something.
Two things. Just want to get out of the way. Do you notice anything about Steve?
I'm 1 year older.
I wore that tie yesterday, so it could have been a huge flash. Number two is, back me up on this. I know you're going to know this.
Okay.
Back in the days of the Catskills when the comedians, was it true they used to sit in the green room with boxer shorts on, not wearing pants?
I think I saw that in a movie, yes.
Right. Just want to say I wasn't making that up.
It's such a
how does that relate to any of us? Are we sitting in the green room with no pants on?
Yeah, they weren't wearing briefs. They wore boxers, and they didn't put their pants on until it was showed.
Okay, so the necktie is one thing, but why would you think about?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Why?
The vaudeville guy.
Because you're not supposed to say hello to Carly until we toss to her to keep everything fresh.
Okay.
I'm so confused.
All right. Let me tell you what happened. We were playing the soundbite of Danica, and we should have been listening. And that's our fault.
I saw the interview.
And he was telling me that story about what was happening backstage. And so then when we came out, I was not prepared. And then he was not prepared to start talking about his resume tape. So now he's explaining this. It's very confusing. Right. Happy birthday. Hope you had a good birthday. Carly, take it back.
I don't think I want to take it away.
I'd say the whole.
I think you guys should keep going.
I think it's good luck not to say hello to Carly until we toss for the first time.
This is
fresh.
Well, let me just add one thing. Okay. Brian, the reason they took their pants off was because they did not want to wrinkle their pants.
Did not know that.
That's why.
I did not know that. Just know they wore boxers.
That's why they were, according to the movie I saw.
Carly,
please save us. I must not have been mic'd when you first started talking about underpants, so all of this is
Mr. Saturday Night.
Yeah.
So, you know what, Ainsley? I will take your advice, and I will not take it away. And I'm going to show you this. We have some wild video out of Minnesota. Police using rope to climb 250 feet to rescue a man stuck on top of a radio tower. Watch this. And he was in a mental health crisis at the time. Police arrested 11 pro-Palestinian protesters who occupied and vandalized an administrative building. And listen to this. A lot of parents will think this is pretty cool. Chick-fil-A is launching a new family-friendly app. It's called Chick-fil-A Play. The free app will launch on November 18th, and it'll feature original animated shows, scripted podcasts, games, video-based recipes. I love that. And kid-friendly crafts and ebooks and interactive stories as well. So they have kids' meals, guys, and now they have a kids' app.
About time.
Amazing, great. So daughter will love it.
We were just talking. Brian doesn't do the weave well.
Right. Still working on my weave. Still working on my weave.
Thank you, Carly.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Carly.
You are most welcome.
We're stepping aside.
We're
going to run a commercial as a public service.
I was supposed to. Fox News alert right now. Thick black smoke is rising over Beirut after the latest series of Israeli strikes. Meanwhile, Israel intercepted Hezbollah rockets fired just hours before Secretary of State Antony Blinken's arrival. Blinken is about to meet with the Prime Minister Netanyahu following a leak of U.S. intelligence on Israel's plans to attack Iran that nobody's happy about. Matt Finn is live in Tel Aviv. Matt.
Brian, good morning. Here in Tel Aviv, the sirens went off this morning. People rushed to the shelters. We looked up in the sky, and our crew saw at least one missile being intercepted by the Iron Dome here in Tel Aviv. Hezbollah says it launched rockets ahead of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit here to Israel. Blinken is here to push for a ceasefire and a peace deal. His visit comes after that leak we reported on, which appears to reveal some of the elements of Israel's anticipated strike against Iran. Now, a senior State Department official to Fox today about Blinken's agenda, saying in regards to any type of solution in Gaza, it's unclear what the next few weeks will look like because Hamas needs to figure out its own leadership in order to get back to the table. The U.S. does not know who is calling the shots for Hamas inside Gaza or if anyone is in control. And turning to the north in Lebanon, Israel says it's been bombing specific Hezbollah targets over the past 48 hours. The IDF says Hezbollah is intentionally using space under a hospital, storing $500 million in the bunker and using it for a financial hub.
Going to declassify intelligence on a site that we did not strike, where Hezbollah has millions of dollars in gold and cash, in Hassan Nasrallah's bunker. Where is the bunker located? Directly under El Sahel Hospital, in the heart of Beirut, in the Dahia.
So Israel says it chose not to strike that hospital for obvious reasons, but it has exposed to the people of Lebanon that underneath it is being used as basically a banking bunker for Hezbollah, and it is urging the people of Lebanon not to allow it to continue. Back to you guys in New York.
Telling the whole world where the gold is. Fascinating. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
So just 2 weeks to the election day, and new polls show Vice President Kamala Harris losing ground with crucial blocks in her party. They have always counted on the Latino voters, but they're now voting for Donald Trump by double digits. The same poll showing her support among black voters hitting a record low with just 72% of them backing her. To put it in perspective, that's down 92%. That's down from 92% from black voter support of the Democratic candidate back in 2016. Fox News contributor and former Democrat Leo Terrell joins us now. So I found this poll just fascinating, Leo. When you look at the support for Hillary Clinton, it was 92% of black support. When you look for Joe Biden, it was 90%. You got Kamala Harris at 78%. The question is why?
Oh, it's very simple. Thanks for having me, Lawrence. It's not in their best interest. It's not in the interest of blacks and Hispanics to vote for Kamala Harris. She hurts them economically. They have seen nothing in progress over the last 4 years. And I want to be very clear. The whole notion of the race card that Trump is racist is dead. It no longer works. And if he is a racist, why are Hispanics and blacks drifting towards him? Because of situations like the barbershop yesterday, where you were with him at the barbershop, and blacks and Hispanics resonate with him, and he resonates with them. And I'll sit here and tell you, I left the Democrats in 2020, voted for Trump, and I voted for him already. That is what's happening, a shift. Economically, it's in blacks and Latinos' interest to vote for Donald J. Trump.
Well, it's strange, too, because she's not speaking to that issue. Even with her plan for black males, she doesn't address the reason why black folks are turning to Donald Trump, especially the black males. But I want to get to this because I find it very interesting that Democrats in these tough races are now crediting Donald Trump, trying to link themselves to it. Here's a montage. Watch. Republicans trying to link themselves to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Lawrence, I thought Donald Trump was a threat to democracy. I thought he was a danger to this country. What you just, and Bob Casey voted to impeach him twice. What you saw here was an admission from Democrats that Trump policies work for America, and they're running away from Kamala Harris. They're running away from Joe Biden. They're running away from the Democrat policy. This is an outright admission that Donald Trump has a policy that will make all Americans great, regardless of skin color or ethnicity.
Yeah, people keep asking me, do you believe the polls that Donald Trump is taking advantage? And I say, I don't have to look at the polls. I'm looking at the Democrats change their messaging. That tells me everything I need to know. Leo, thanks so much for joining the program this morning.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thanks for having me.
You got it. So
2,000 migrants are heading to the United States with just under 2 weeks until Election Day. They'll worry the outcome in November may tighten border security if Trump wins. Here to discuss, Executive Director for the Center for a Secure Free Society and Heritage Foundation Fellow, Joseph Humire. Joe, good to see you. Your thoughts about the 2,000 coming our direction, and who are they?
Yeah, Brian, this is probably the most predictable caravan of them all. Many people said that, once we get closer to the election, there's probably going to be a mass wave of migration that's coming to the United States. Part of that is I think many people feel that President Trump's going to win the election. And so they think that this kind of open border policy is going to end relatively soon. So they're trying to make it before that happens. But the other aspect of this, Brian, is that, this has been going on for a long time. It's going on for 4 years or more. And we have to start thinking about this separately than just ordinary illegal migration that's been happening over decades. There's been an organized effort that's called weaponized migration. That's when small countries have used migration as a weapon of warfare to collapse borders and steal sovereignty. There's actually professional academics that have documented this 81 instances since 1951 and the UN Refugee Convention. But now, in the last 4 years, this has gone on steroids. A lot of these NGOs are financed by international organizations, financed by adversarial nation states, or financed by criminal organizations that really want to do harm to America. And I think that that's what we're seeing here today.
We are, and they're not Mexicans. So they're not Mexicans coming to our border. There are other people that migrated to Mexico and are deciding they got to get here quick. Just to give you an idea of what the numbers look like right now under President Biden, there's been 2,216 apprehensions with gang affiliation, over 1,800 encounters with men on a terror watch list. So this is disturbing. For those people who say, oh, you have a discordant, inaccurate way of portraying illegal immigrants as criminals, here's what Congressman Tony Gonzalez says, the exact opposite of an alarmist. He says, apologists for the Biden-Harris administration claim illegal aliens with criminal histories are only a fraction of the nation's population. These criminals are a significant portion of the millions who have illegally entered the country in recent years. How can anyone claim they don't pose a threat? How do you feel about the congressman's conclusions?
No, I agree 100%. And here's the irony of this, Brian, that, by allowing these criminals and terrorists to infiltrate these migrant networks, who's actually paying the price for that first? The migrants. They're the ones that are actually getting abused, exploited, sexually trafficked, and all these other things. So those that claim to be migrant friendly are often doing the most harm to migrants by promoting these policies of open border policies that have failed, not just in the United States, failed all throughout the world.
And you say, look out for the NGOs and the people that finance the NGOs. They make money as a pit stop when these illegals come here. They get their basic needs done, and then they put them into schools and into societies, right?
Yeah, this has become a big business. I mean, human trafficking is a mega business that rivals drug trafficking. And then NGOs have become legitimizers of an illicit industry. They become, not all NGOs, but some of these NGOs, actually, I would say a good number of these NGOs are actually either wittingly or unwittingly doing the bidding of human traffickers that are trying to move migrants across borders to be able to exploit them for sexual labor or other nefarious purposes.
All right, Joe, thanks so much. Appreciate it, putting it in perspective. And we'll continue to track this as we get closer and closer to our border. Thanks. Meanwhile,
absolutely. Thank you.
I sense they're going to break it up before they get to the border because it's a political hot potato. We'll see. This moment now from Lawrence's Barbershop Talk with Trump getting a lot of attention.
In the last 7 months, it shot up to 15,000.
What?
It's 15,000. And that's,
you went from 2,100
to 15,000.
Later today, Vladimir Putin is going to gather dozens of world leaders in Russia for the annual BRICS summit to push their goal of establishing a new currency to challenge the American dollar. But the White House doesn't seem too worried about how that could threaten our economy.
How concerned is the administration that this bloc of countries could undermine U.S. economic or trade strength?
What we're focused on is on the working with partners around the world. We're not looking at BRICS as an evolving into some kind of geopolitical rival.
Oh, really? Well, Stuart Varney is concerned. Of course, he's the host of Varney and Company over on Fox Business. He joins us live here on the couch.
Morning, Steve.
So BRICS, to remind people, stands for the countries of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Iran, places like that.
There's 2 dozen of them.
So what are they trying to do?
Well, it's a Putin diplomatic success. He's got his cronies to stand together in Russia to mount an anti-Western coalition. Without Biden's weakness, they wouldn't be there. Putin's success is built on Biden's weakness. After Afghanistan, we had no strength overseas whatsoever, and we were challenged in all directions. This is the formalization of that challenge. That's what Putin's doing. What they're frightened of, they are terrified of a Trump win. because he projects strength overseas, not weakness. He projects strength for our economy domestically, not weakness. And the BRICS people, they don't want that.
Right. And so what they're suggesting is that currently the SWIFT monetary system is what prices a lot of stuff around the world. They want to start their own, the BRICS.
Well, the SWIFT system is a way of international payments, and it's based on the US dollar. They want to replace that because with the SWIFT system, they find it very hard to get around sanctions.
Right.
Replace SWIFT, replace the dollar, and they can do what they like.
They get their money back.
It's not going to happen. You are not going to replace the US dollar as the world currency anytime in the near future, or distant future, frankly.
Putin can want what Putin can want, but it's just not going to happen. All right. Meanwhile, Stuart, I want to play you a soundbite. This was the former president.
I love it.
In a barbershop up in the Bronx last week. Watch this.
My issue was more the energy. I've been paying $2,100 since I first opened up. In the last 7 months, it shot up to $15,000.
What?
It's $15,000, and that's
you went from 2,100
to $15,000 in this establishment. Yeah.
How many heads can you take care of? That's a lot. Right?
So that guy is talking about the cost of electricity for that barbershop.
Right. That's what voters are concerned about.
Right.
It's not that prices are easing. It's not that prices are coming down. It's that we've got to live with the prices created by the inflation of Biden and Harris. Moving, $2,100 a month to, or a year, or whatever it was, to $15,000.
Right.
That is a shock to the system of any business. You can't pay. You can't stay in business. Trump comes along and says, I will cut energy prices in half in my first year in office. Whether he can do that or not doesn't matter. It resonates with people who have to pay these prices.
Because people know that everything is based on the cost of energy, to ship things places and stuff like that, whereas she has not really given a plan. And that's one of her biggest weaknesses in the polls. I'd like to know more about her.
Trump's mantra is drill, baby, drill. Cut energy prices in half. That's how you get rid of inflation. That's what resonates with so many investors and voters.
I got a feeling you're going to be talking about this and so many other things. Catch him over on Barney and Company weekdays. Starts at 9 o'clock over on Fox Business. All right.
Thank you, Steve.
Sir. All right. Across the studio we go. And Brian's going to highlight Monday Night Football.
Yep. We have a few sports headlines, Steve. MNF 2 games. Lamar.
ये दूध बॉईल हो रहा है इल्फा का उमर जी इम्तियाज का ख्याल रखना है इम्तियाज को बाहर भी नहीं निकलने देना अच्छा ठीक है हाँ तो गाइस इम्तियाज को मुझे एतबार नहीं है ये दूसरी शादी कहता रहता है मैं आऊँ बोल रहा हूँ जिसकी दूसरी बीवी आई बैठी हो
सही क्या है यार आ जाओ चलते हैं ये लाइटें बंद कर ये देखें सारा दिन सोते रहते हैं
बाप बेटी का प्यार चक्कर गाइस गाइस दूसरी शादी करने का वैसे चांस है ओ इल्फार हो रही है कहते हैं माँ बेटी मिलके ना मैंने इसका गला दबा देना है और इसको पहुंचाना है वहां पे जहाँ पे आपकी सोच जा रही है गाइस देख ले आप हमारे मेरे गवाह जिस दिन भी मरा ना इसके खिलाफ पर्चा कराऊंगा मैं तुम होगे तो इस दुनिया में मेरे खिलाफ पर्चा ओ मेरी सबसे पहले नानी के घर चल रहे हाँ हमने जाना नानी के घर मजे मजे इसके पहले मैंने यहाँ पे वो कर दिया कमरे की सफाई करके गई हूँ वो वैसे को जूता उतार के बाहर गया गाइस मैं बिस्तर रख के आती हूँ
2 7 और चक्कर ना लगाना पड़े ये देखें इतने सारे बर्तन पड़े हैं
इतने सारे नहीं है थोड़े से
अच्छा आपके लिए थोड़े
गाइस सब रानी लाल बन चुकी है सब नौकरानी गाइस चलते हैं
ओ दूध गया तो ना
असर भी नहीं है इतना ठंडा दूध है
देखो इरफा क्यों रो रही है?
इरफा को भूख लग गई है। इरफा के लिए वो सूजी बनानी है मैंने।
सही सही सही, ये देखें माशाल्लाह।
जल्दी जल्दी से इरफा के लिए सूजी बनाओ।
यार इसे लेना, काम कर रहे हैं, उसे लें यार, लेना 1 मिनट
संभालो। मैं साइड से उठाऊं।
इस हैवी बैग के तो साइड पे करो।
ओह चिकन साफ कर रहे हैं। बाद में इसका कचरा साफ करते हैं।
सहन से
हम झाड़ू लगा लेते हैं जल्दी जल्दी से।
सफाई हो रही है।
अगर गुस्सा डाउंगे चूल्हा पर सारे मैंने की पड़ेगा अगैस रोड के।
हाँ चलते हैं सब्बा बाजी के पास।
प्यारी की देख सकते हैं बर्तन धोने स्टार्ट कर दिए हैं।
चमक गया, चमक गया, चमक।
जल्दी जल्दी से बर्तन धो लेते हैं, उसके बाद मैं बस कपड़े पहनाती हूँ। इरफा को भी फिर आपके साथ हम पूरी वीडियो दिखाएंगे। कितना हो गया मैं?
टाइम हो गया है, कैसे बताता हूँ। नहीं 10:44 जी। जाते जाते आपको 3 बज जाएंगे।
नहीं अभी रेडी होती हूँ।
छोड़ने कौन जाएगा? मैं नहीं जाऊंगा सर्दी में। तो गाइस बर्तन धो लिए, चलते हैं अब रखने के लिए। देख रहे हैं
प्यारे विवाज मैंने बर्तन धो लिए हैं, तो अभी जो है इम्तियाज आग जला रहा है।
इधर देखो
गाइस बहुत ज्यादा ठंडा है विवाज।
आग तो जले नहीं।
जल रहा
तो मैं चलती हूँ छत पे कपड़े उतारने बच्चों के।
चलते हैं।
प्यारे विवाज देख सकते हैं इरफा रेडी हो चुकी है, अवैस भी रेडी हो चुका है। तो हम जा रहे हैं अम्मी के घर। तो इरफा का कंबल भी लेती हूँ क्योंकि कंबल में छुपा के लेके जाऊंगी, वो ना हो सर्दी लग जाए। और 4 इरफा ने नीचे जर्सियां पहनी और 5 ही ऊपर है। ऐसे हाँ तो गाइस हम चलते हैं। तो आज का आपको व्लॉग कैसा लगता है लाजमी बताने। व्लॉग खत्म करने से पहले चैनल को सब्सक्राइब, वीडियो को लाइक करें। मिलेंगे अगली वीडियो में। अल्लाह हाफिज।
अल्लाह हाफिज।